My name is Agnes, 67 years old, retired teacher with a beautiful colonial home in Connecticut. My son, Michael, and his wife, Stephanie, moved nearby last year and things have been complicated. Last Sunday, Stephanie announced casually over dinner, "We're having Christmas here. It's just 15 people." I nodded silently, washing dishes, as 30 years of holiday hosting flashed before my eyes. That night, I made a decision that changed everything. Before I tell you what happened when I finally stood up for myself, after years of being taken for granted, let me know where you're watching from. And subscribe if you've ever had a family member who thinks your home is their event space. I've been widowed for 8 years now. My husband Thomas passed away after a brief battle with pancreatic cancer, leaving me to raise our 2 children, Michael and Lisa, on my own. Lisa lives in Oregon with her husband and 2 children, while Michael stayed closer to home. I live in the same 4-bedroom colonial house in Fairfield County that Thomas and I bought 30 years ago. It's a beautiful place with a large kitchen, spacious living room, and a backyard with a garden I tend meticulously. It's my sanctuary, my pride and joy. For 3 decades, I've hosted every family gathering, every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every Easter, every birthday. I loved it once. The preparation, the cooking, the decorating. There's something special about creating memories for the people you love. After Thomas died, keeping the tradition alive helped me cope with his absence. The house felt less empty when filled with family. Michael met Stephanie at a friend's wedding 5 years ago. She's from New Jersey, works in marketing, and is 13 years younger than him. Initially, I was thrilled when they started dating. Michael had been single for years after a difficult divorce, and Stephanie seemed to make him happy. She was friendly, energetic, and showed interest in our family traditions. The first red flag appeared just 3 months into their relationship. It was Michael's birthday, and I'd planned a small dinner for the 3 of us. The day before, Stephanie called to confirm the details for the party she'd apparently organized at my house for 20 of Michael's friends. She hadn't mentioned this to me before. "Oh, I thought Michael would have told you," she said when I expressed surprise. "It's no big deal, right? Your house is perfect for entertaining." I remember standing in my kitchen phone, pressed to my ear, feeling a strange mix of confusion and irritation. But I swallowed my feelings and agreed. What else could I do? The invitations had already been sent. That night, I stayed up late, cleaning, shopping, and preparing food for guests I hadn't invited. That incident established a pattern that would repeat itself with increasing frequency. Last Easter, Stephanie informed me, not asked informed, that her parents and siblings would be joining us. 8 extra people with 2 days' notice. I scrambled to buy extra food and rearrange my dining room to accommodate everyone. In July, Michael mentioned having a few friends over for a backyard barbecue. It turned into a pool party for over 20 people, most of whom I'd never met. Stephanie took over my kitchen, rearranged my furniture, and left me to clean up the mess afterward. Thanksgiving last year was the worst. Stephanie's extended family descended on my house like locusts. Her mother took over my kitchen, criticizing my recipes and rearranging my cabinets. Her father monopolized the television, switching from the traditional Thanksgiving parade to football without asking. Her teenage nephews tracked mud across my carpets and knocked over a vase that had belonged to my grandmother. Through all of this, Michael became increasingly passive. My once considerate son would shrug apologetically, but never stood up for me. "That's just how Stephanie is," he'd say. "She likes to take charge." I began to feel like a guest in my own home, my opinions and preferences ignored. I love my son, and I wanted to support his relationship. So I accommodated. I smiled. I pretended everything was fine. But with each incident, resentment grew simmering just beneath my practiced smile. It was a typical Sunday dinner. I'd made pot roast, Michael's favorite since childhood. The three of us sat around my dining table, as we did most Sundays, the conversation flowing easily enough about work, neighbors, and the unusually cold autumn we were having. Then Stephanie put down her fork and made her announcement. "So, for Christmas this year," she said, cutting into her meat, "I'm thinking we'll do it here again. It's just 15 people, so nothing too crazy." I paused my fork halfway to my mouth. 15 people. "Yeah," Stephanie continued, not noticing my expression. "My parents, of course, my sister Brooke, and her husband and their 3 kids, my brother Jeff and his new girlfriend. My Aunt Linda and Uncle Paul are visiting from Chicago, and my cousins Amanda and Taylor and their partners." She listed them off casually, as if discussing a grocery list, rather than 15 people invading my home. I did a quick mental count. 15 plus the 3 of us made 18 people. 18 people in my house for Christmas. "We'll need to use the good china," Stephanie continued, helping herself to more potatoes. "And I was thinking we could rearrange the living room furniture to fit the tree in the corner by the window this year. My mom never liked where you put it last time." I glanced at Michael, hoping for some support, but he was studying his plate intently, avoiding my eyes. This was a familiar pose, head down, silent, letting Stephanie make decisions that affected my home, my space, my life. "You'll handle the turkey and sides, right?" Stephanie asked, though it wasn't really a question. "My mom will bring her sweet potato casserole, but you know how that turned out last year," she laughed. "And we'll need to set up the guest rooms. My parents can take the blue room, and we can put the kids in sleeping bags in the basement." My mind was spinning. Stephanie wasn't asking. She was telling. My house had been volunteered without my consent. Again. I would be expected to cook, clean, host, and cater to the whims of people who showed little appreciation for my efforts. Again. "Stephanie," I began, but she was already pulling out her phone. "I'm making a shopping list," she said. "Do you still have those Christmas platters from last year? And we should get more chairs. Maybe we can borrow some from your neighbor, Judy." Something shifted inside me at that moment. A lifetime of accommodating others, of putting my needs last, of saying yes when I wanted to say no. It all rose up like a wave. I excused myself to the kitchen, under the pretense of getting dessert. But really, I needed a moment alone. Standing at my sink, hands submerged in warm, soapy water, I had a moment of absolute clarity. I didn't have to do this. I didn't have to surrender my holiday, my home, my peace to someone who clearly took me for granted. I was 67 years old, and I deserved to enjoy Christmas on my terms. When I returned to the dining table with apple pie, I wore a smile that felt different. Not the usual placating one, but one that held a secret. I didn't contradict Stephanie's plans or voice my frustrations. Not yet. But as I served dessert, I knew what I was going to do. Looking back, I should have set boundaries years ago. Every holiday with Stephanie had become increasingly stressful, each one chipping away at my patience a little more. Last Christmas was particularly challenging. Stephanie's mother, Glenda, spent the entire day making subtle comments about my decorations, rearranging my kitchen drawers without asking, and improving my recipes when I wasn't looking. "I'm just helping, Agnes," she'd say, with a saccharine smile when I found her reorganizing my spice rack. "Your system doesn't make any sense." 30 years of cooking in that kitchen, and apparently I didn't know where my own oregano should go. Stephanie's teenage nephews, Jackson and Tyler, were left unsupervised in my living room while the adults chatted in the kitchen. I returned to find them tossing a small football back and forth dangerously close to my display of hand-blown glass ornaments, including 3 irreplaceable ones that had belonged to Thomas's grandmother. When I asked them to take the ball outside, Stephanie intervened. "They're just playing Agnes," she said dismissively. "It's fine." 10 minutes later, I heard a crash. One of the antique ornaments lay shattered on the hardwood floor. Neither boy apologized, and Stephanie merely shrugged. "Kids will be kids," she said, as if that excused the destruction of a family heirloom. During Christmas dinner, Stephanie complained about the turkey being dry. It wasn't, and the cranberry sauce being too tart. It was my mother's recipe. She had contributed exactly nothing to the meal preparation, but had plenty of opinions about the results. After everyone left, I spent 3 hours cleaning up, while Michael dozed in front of the television. I remember standing in my kitchen at 11 o'clock at night, exhausted, surrounded by dirty dishes and discarded wrapping paper, wondering when hosting family had turned from a joy into a burden. A week after that disastrous Christmas, I had lunch with my friend Martha. We've known each other since our teaching days, and she's never been one to mince words. "You know what your problem is, Agnes," she said over her Caesar salad. "You're too accommodating. You've let Stephanie walk all over you because you're afraid of upsetting Michael." Her bluntness startled me. "That's not true," I protested weakly. Martha raised an eyebrow. "Isn't it? When was the last time you said no to one of her demands?" I couldn't answer. "You're not a doormat, Agnes," Martha continued more gently. "And you're not a holiday event space for Stephanie to book at her convenience." That conversation stayed with me, resurfacing now as I contemplated Stephanie's latest commandeering of my Christmas. I remembered another conversation too, one with Thomas during his final days. We were discussing what I would do after he was gone. "Promise me you'll enjoy your retirement," he had said, his voice weak, but his eyes intense. "Travel. Take those art classes you've always wanted to try. Don't just exist, Aggie. Live." Had I kept that promise? Or had I simply transferred my caretaking from Thomas to Michael and now to Stephanie? That night, after the Sunday dinner, where Stephanie announced her Christmas plans. I sat at my computer with a surge of rebellious energy. I typed Christmas cruises into the search bar. Dozens of options appeared: the Caribbean, the Mediterranean, the Mexican Riviera. Places with sun and warmth and no turkey to baste or relatives to accommodate. One listing caught my eye: a 14-day Caribbean cruise departing December 20th from Miami. It would visit St. Thomas, St. Martin, Barbados, Antigua, and several other islands. Single occupancy cabins available. No supplement fee for solo travelers. My heart raced as I clicked through the photos of blue waters, white beaches, and elegant dining rooms. I imagined waking up on Christmas morning to an ocean view instead of a house full of demanding guests. No cooking, no cleaning, no catering to Stephanie's family's whims. With slightly shaking hands, I entered my credit card information and booked the trip. As the confirmation email appeared in my inbox, a strange feeling washed over me. Part guilt, part anxiety, but mostly a soaring, unfamiliar sense of freedom. That night, I barely slept. What would I tell Michael and Stephanie? Was I being selfish, unreasonable? But as dawn broke, another thought crystallized. This is my house, my life, my Christmas. It was time they remembered that. I arranged to meet Michael and Stephanie at a coffee shop in town the following Saturday. Neutral territory seemed wiser than my kitchen, where Stephanie tended to take control of conversations as readily as she did my appliances. They arrived together, Stephanie already talking about Christmas decorations before she'd even sat down. I was thinking about getting new stockings for everyone this year, she said, unwinding her scarf. The old ones are looking a bit shabby. The old ones were hand-knitted by my mother. I bit my tongue and smiled, waiting for them to get settled with their coffees. I have some news, I said, when there was finally a pause in Stephanie's monologue. Oh. Michael looked up, curious. He knows that tone. It's the one I used to announce his father's diagnosis. Lisa's engagement, my retirement. I've decided to take a trip this Christmas, I said, trying to sound casual, while my heart hammered against my ribs. I've booked a Caribbean cruise from December 20th through January 3rd. The silence that followed was profound. Michael's coffee cup froze halfway to his mouth. Stephanie's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. A cruise, she finally managed. Over Christmas. I nodded, maintaining my calm exterior through sheer force of will. Yes, I've always wanted to try one, and there was a special rate for solo travelers. But, we're having Christmas at your house, Stephanie sputtered. We've already told everyone. I'm sorry about that, I said, not feeling very sorry at all. But you didn't actually ask me before making those plans. Stephanie's face flushed. I didn't think I needed to. We always have Christmas at your house. Yes, I agreed. We always have Christmas at my house. I always cook. I always clean. I always host. I always accommodate everyone else's preferences and complaints. And this year, I've decided to do something different. Michael finally found his voice. Mom, couldn't you take a cruise some other time, like in January or February? The special rate was for Christmas, I said, which wasn't entirely true, but felt justified in the moment. And honestly, Michael, I'd like to experience one holiday where I'm not responsible for everyone else's good time. Stephanie's expression darkened. This is so selfish, she said, her voice rising. It's Christmas, family should be together. I agree, I replied evenly. Family should be together, perhaps at your house this year. That suggestion landed like a bomb. Stephanie physically recoiled. Our apartment. It's tiny. We couldn't possibly fit everyone. Then perhaps a smaller gathering is in order, or a restaurant, or your parents' house in New Jersey. There are options. Stephanie's tactics shifted from shock to manipulation, a transition I'd witnessed many times before. How could you do this to us? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. I recognized the performance, the quivering lip, the wide eyes. It had worked on me before, not today. I'm not doing anything to you, Stephanie. I'm making a choice about how I spend my holiday. Your son won't forget this, she said, glancing at Michael for support. Will you, Michael? To his credit, my son looked uncomfortable with being drawn into this emotional blackmail. He shifted in his seat, looking between us. I think, he said slowly, that we need to figure out an alternative. Stephanie stood abruptly, gathering her things. I can't believe we're even having this conversation, after everything we've done for you, Agnes. The irony of that statement was so profound that I almost laughed. What exactly had Stephanie ever done for me except create work stress and mess? She stormed out of the coffee shop, leaving Michael and me sitting in awkward silence. My hands were shaking under the table, but I felt a strange, growing sense of pride. I had stood my ground. Mom, Michael began, his voice tight. Stephanie's just upset. She had her heart set on Christmas at your place. I understand that, I said. But Michael, did it ever occur to either of you to ask me if I wanted to host 18 people this year? Did anyone consider what I might want for Christmas? His expression told me the answer, no. It hadn't crossed their minds. I'm not your nanny or your maid. I continued the words I'd been holding back for years, finally finding voice. I love you, and I've always loved hosting our family holidays. But I'm tired of being taken for granted. Michael looked genuinely shocked. I didn't realize you felt that way. Because you never asked, I replied simply. We talked for another 30 minutes, really talked in a way we hadn't in years. Michael admitted feeling caught between his wife's expectations and his concern for me. I explained my growing frustration with Stephanie's entitlement toward my home and time. When we parted, nothing was resolved about Christmas plans, but something had shifted between us. I walked home with my head high, despite the knot of anxiety in my stomach. Change is never easy, especially when you've spent a lifetime being the accommodating one. The next few weeks were challenging, to say the least. Stephanie maintained a frosty silence, communicating with me only through Michael when absolutely necessary. Her passive-aggressive behavior extended to social media, where she posted vague comments about selfish family members and the true meaning of Christmas being lost on some people. Michael was caught in the middle, trying to maintain relationships with both his wife and his mother. I could see the strain on him when he visited alone the following Sunday. Stephanie's really upset, Mom, he said, helping me wash dishes after a much quieter dinner than usual. She doesn't understand why you'd abandon us at Christmas. The word abandon stung. Was that really how they saw it? Was taking one holiday for myself, after decades of service, really abandonment? Doubt crept in. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe I should cancel the cruise, swallow my pride, and host Christmas as always. The thought of Stephanie's smug victory if I backed down made me cringe, but perhaps it would be worth it for family peace. Then my phone rang. It was Martha calling to see how Operation Liberation was progressing. I told her about my wavering resolve. "Agnes Thompson," she said firmly, "don't you dare cancel that cruise. You deserve this. If you give in now, nothing will ever change." She was right, of course. But standing firm became increasingly difficult as the pressure mounted. Stephanie had apparently enlisted reinforcements. Her parents called me directly, something they'd never done before, to express their concern about my sudden decision to spend Christmas alone. "We're just worried about you, Agnes," Glenda said, her voice dripping with insincere concern. "It's not healthy for someone your age to be alone on a boat during the holidays." I bit back the response that immediately came to mind, that I'd rather be alone on a boat than spend another minute with people who saw me as nothing more than a convenient venue and catering service. "Thank you for your concern," I said instead, "but I've made my decision." Word of the Christmas crisis spread through our social circle. Some neighbors and church friends sided with Stephanie, suggesting I was being unreasonable. "It's just one day," my neighbor Judy said when we bumped into each other at the grocery store. "Couldn't you reschedule your cruise?" Others, particularly my fellow widows and single friends, expressed admiration for my stand. "Good for you," said Diane from my book club. It's about time someone reminded these young people that we have lives too. As Thanksgiving approached, the situation remained unresolved. Stephanie had reluctantly begun exploring other options, but continued to make it clear that she considered my decision a personal betrayal. Then my sister Joan called from Arizona. Joan and I aren't particularly close. We talk a few times a year and see each other even less frequently. But she's 5 years older than me and has always had a no-nonsense approach to life. "Michael called me," she said without preamble. "He's worried about this Christmas situation." I sighed, preparing for another lecture about family obligations. "I told him you were absolutely right," Joan continued, surprising me. "I told him that his wife needs to learn some boundaries and that you're not a holiday venue for hire." Tears sprang to my eyes. "Really? Really?" Joan confirmed. "Agnes, you've always been the peacemaker, the one who accommodates everyone else. It's about time you did something for yourself." That conversation was a turning point. If even my traditionally minded sister supported my decision, perhaps I wasn't being unreasonable after all. Thanksgiving arrived with tension still lingering. I hosted a much smaller gathering, just Michael, Stephanie, and me. Stephanie was civil, but cool. Her conversation limited to necessary pleasantries. After dinner, while Michael watched football, Stephanie helped me clear the table, a first in our relationship. As we stood side by side at the sink, she finally addressed the elephant in the room. "So you're really going on this cruise?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Yes," I replied. "My flight to Miami leaves December 19th. She nodded slowly, scrubbing a dish with unnecessary force. "We found a restaurant that can accommodate everyone for Christmas dinner," she said after a moment. "It's not ideal, but it'll work." It wasn't exactly an olive branch, but it was an acknowledgement of reality. I decided to offer one of my own. "You're welcome to use my Christmas decorations," I said. "The artificial tree, the ornaments, except the antique glass ones, the table linens, everything. And I'm happy to share all my recipes." Stephanie looked surprised. "You trust me with your things?" "Of course." I said, though trust might have been overstating it. "They should be used and enjoyed." She seemed to consider this. "Your house really does have more space than ours." "Yes, but it's still my house," I said gently but firmly. "And sometimes I need it to be just that, my space." Something shifted in Stephanie's expression, not quite understanding, but perhaps the beginning of it. Later that evening, Michael pulled me aside and for the first time explicitly supported my decision. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said quietly. "I should have seen how Stephanie and I were taking advantage of you. Enjoy your cruise. We'll be fine." Those words were the best Thanksgiving gift I could have received. The weeks that followed were busy with preparation. I bought new summer clothes for the cruise, arranged for a neighbor to collect my mail, and gradually relaxed into the excitement of my coming adventure. True to my word, I helped Stephanie transition to hosting. I shared recipes, showed her how to make my signature cranberry sauce, and even helped her plan a table arrangement for her apartment. Our relationship wasn't magically repaired, but it was evolving into something with more mutual respect. Finally, departure day arrived. Standing in my quiet house suitcase by the door, I felt a complex mix of emotions: guilt, freedom, anxiety, excitement. For the first time in decades, I didn't know exactly how Christmas would unfold. That uncertainty was both terrifying and exhilarating. The cruise ship was magnificent, larger and more luxurious than I had imagined. My cabin was small, but comfortable, with a private balcony overlooking the ocean. As the ship pulled away from Miami that evening, I stood at the railing, watching the city lights recede, feeling like I was leaving more than just the mainland behind. At the first dinner, I was seated with other solo travelers. Two widows about my age, a recently divorced man in his 60s, and a retired teacher who, like me, was taking her first independent vacation. We bonded quickly over shared stories of family holiday stress and the liberation of breaking tradition. "My daughters were horrified when I said I was cruising over Christmas," said Patricia, a silver-haired woman from Seattle. "You'd think I'd announced I was joining a cult." "My son-in-law actually asked who would cook the turkey if I wasn't there," added Marilyn from Chicago, rolling her eyes. "As if he doesn't have two functioning hands." Christmas morning dawned bright and beautiful. I woke to sunshine streaming through my cabin window and the gentle sway of the ship. No 5 a.m. alarm to start the turkey. No frantic cleaning or table setting. Just peace, quiet, and the knowledge that the only person I needed to please that day was myself. I did miss my family, of course. Around noon, Michael sent photos of their gathering at Stephanie's apartment. They'd managed to fit the essential family members by renting extra chairs and setting up a buffet instead of a formal dinner. Stephanie looked stressed, but proud in the pictures standing beside a smaller version of my traditional Christmas spread. "Merry Christmas, Mom," Michael's text read. "We miss you, but we're managing. Stephanie says to tell you her turkey is dry and she has newfound respect for your cooking skills." That made me smile. Perhaps this forced independence was good for both of us. When I returned home on January 3rd, my house was exactly as I had left it. Clean, quiet, and mine. The cruise had been everything I'd hoped for. Relaxing, adventurous, liberating. I'd made new friends, tried new foods, and even gone snorkeling for the first time in my life. Most importantly, I'd rediscovered a part of myself that had been submerged beneath years of caretaking and accommodation. Michael visited the day after my return, eager to hear about my trip, but also to share his own Christmas experience. We sat in my living room, mugs of hot chocolate, warming our hands against the January chill. "It was actually good," he admitted. "Different, but good. Stephanie was really stressed at first, but she pulled it together." "And how was the turkey?" I asked, unable to resist. Michael laughed. "Dry as sawdust, but she learned a lot. She said she never realized how much work goes into hosting Christmas. That was exactly the lesson I'd hoped she'd learn." "She wanted to come with me today," Michael continued, "but she thought you might want some space after your trip. She did ask me to give you this, though." He handed me a small gift bag. Inside was a handmade ornament, a tiny cruise ship with Agnes's Great Escape painted on the side in Stephanie's neat handwriting. It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was an acknowledgement, a small step toward a more balanced relationship. Over the following weeks, I noticed subtle changes in our family dynamic. Stephanie called before dropping by rather than showing up unannounced. She asked rather than told when suggesting activities at my house. And when she mentioned Easter plans, she actually posed it as a question. "Would you be open to hosting Easter this year, Agnes?" We'd help with everything, of course. The healing in our relationship wasn't instant or complete. There were still moments of tension, still occasions when old patterns threatened to resurface. But my Christmas cruise had reset the boundaries in a way that simple conversations never could have. For my part, I was learning too. Learning that saying no didn't make me selfish. Learning that setting boundaries didn't mean rejecting the people I loved. Learning that, after a lifetime of caring for others, it was finally time to include myself on that list. Michael and I grew closer as well. Without Stephanie dominating our interactions, we rediscovered the easy relationship we'd had before his marriage. He confessed that he'd been afraid of losing me if he challenged Stephanie's behavior, not realizing that he was losing me anyway through his passivity. As for me, I found myself enjoying my home again. It became a sanctuary rather than an event space, a reflection of my tastes and preferences, rather than a backdrop for others' demands. I started taking those art classes Thomas had encouraged. I joined a hiking group for seniors. I began in small but significant ways to live rather than just exist. Looking back, I realize that the greatest gift I gave my family that Christmas wasn't my absence. It was the lesson that respect must be mutual, that love doesn't mean martyrdom, and that even at 67, it's never too late to rediscover your own worth. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? What happened when you finally stood up for yourself? Share your stories in the comments below. And if you found something valuable in my experience, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about navigating family dynamics with grace and self-respect. Remember, it's never too late to teach others how to treat you. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for your family is to love yourself enough to say no. Thank you for listening, and may your holidays be filled with joy, peace, and healthy boundaries.